Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. In this update, we're going to be tracking two large storm systems, and one of them could lead to severe storms as we head into late next week. So let's expand the view this morning and take a look at the big picture. First, we've got an area of storm complexes that's coming off into the North Pacific there. That is going to lead with some very cold air impacting that region, but also lead to some heavier winds and definitely some heavier snows and heavier rains across the West Coast. There's your more active subtropical jet stream that's feeding moisture, impacting those areas into the southeast. So I appreciate all my subscribers out there. If you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns on North America as well as the tropics, hit the subscribe button and follow along so I can keep you well ahead of the storm. So let's take a look and kind of zoom in first into the Northwest. Here's where the instability lies, and all the heavier snows are going to be impacting the Pacific Northwest. We've got widespread winter storm warnings all across the board into the Cascades. Those are blizzard warnings there in the Sierra Nevadas. We're talking feet of snow with this particular system. Rain, more heavy rain along the coast into California. But look what's going to happen with this storm complex that will be diving southeast. Unfortunately, that's going to lead to some more high winds across these areas where they are experiencing all the fires down there into the Texas Panhandle and Oklahoma as well as into Kansas. We have a renewed fire weather watch that takes place this weekend as humidity values go dangerously low again, and that's going to crank up the fires and increase that risk as well. It's already the largest in Texas history, so that since they've been tracking these fires, and it's just a devastating setup with very dry conditions across that region. And I don't really see much in the way of rainfall over the next 7 days, unfortunately. Where all the action is highlighted across the southeast. There's the storm complex that moved out of portions of Texas yesterday. Now it's highlighted over the southeast today. So for those areas into the New Orleans region, back into Mobile, back into Jackson, up here towards Atlanta, getting into Columbia, up here towards Charlotte, they're getting the light to moderate rain showers with this storm complex. But there's the system with the western storm. It's pretty significant, guys. We're talking feet of snow in the mountain regions. I think this is somewhat overdone. 12 feet. I don't think they get 12 feet, but yeah, they're going to get a lot of snow. I mean, some of these estimates are upwards to 8 to 10 feet from this particular system. And so those higher elevations in the Sierra Nevadas, so dangerously set up with blizzard conditions right across the board, and wind gusts upwards to 75 miles an hour at a lot of those mountain passes. And just very blinding, whiteout conditions, blowing and drifting snow into this region. And overall, for the next 48 hours, here's where your snowfall is going to be. It's really mainly confined around the West Coast as well as into the Intermountain West. I mean, this is the latest high resolution guidance that actually maxes out at 106 inches there, some of the higher elevations. So you get the idea. It's going to be snowing a lot across this region. And where the rainfall is going to be over the next 48 hours is really two-pronged. It's going to be out west, where they've got that instability with that low pressure moving in off the West Coast. That's also going to be out east, where they all have that instability right now. That's going to continue to shift eastward over the coming days and bring some heavier rains in its wake. So where you see these red shaded areas, that's where they could easily pick up possibly 2 to 3 inches of heavier rainfall. And this is just over the course of the next 48 hours, essentially from the southeast all the way up the eastern seaboard into the Carolinas and headed up into the East Coast. And you move a little bit further inland, you get lighter amounts as you spread towards Kentucky as well as into Pennsylvania, portions of Maryland there into Ohio. But moving on, there's the weekend. I mean, we're going to be starting to rapidly warm. So we've had a lot of transition. We had all those record high temperatures, and then we had that pretty significant cold blast that came through, but that was short-lived, and that continues now as the winds have turned around from the southwest. That's significant because that's going to be a change in direction for those fires. And unfortunately, some of that snow they actually got yesterday into the Texas Panhandle didn't actually make it to those areas where they do have the fires. But what's concerning is these humidity values drop down in the single digit at times this weekend, and they're expecting winds now of 50 miles an hour again. Then the winds are going to be coming from the southwest, moving the fires from a different direction from that north wind that they saw with that cold front. It's just a dangerous setup and just very dry conditions across this region. And as we continue to heat up, I mean, we're going to be seeing values, more record high temperatures potentially by Sunday. Right now, the National Weather Service is forecasting like another 32 records unfolding as those 70s actually surge all the way back up into Illinois again, up into Wisconsin for highs into the first part of March. There's where the cooler air is. It's complements of where that trough is, and it's very cold up there in British Columbia, out there in Western Canada. But we're going to be watching kind of two complexes. You got, this is the, you know, your southern branch, you got your northern branch of the jet stream, and the southern branch is going to get a little bit more active. So they have the instability that's coming through now, but they're also going to have another little short wave that's going to come through on Monday. That's going to set up renewed instability across Louisiana as well as into Arkansas. Some of these actually could be borderline severe during the heat of the afternoon, and then we'll be watching kind of a mini cool front. I don't think this is cold by any stretch of the imagination, but it is going to be kicking off a renewed threat of showers and more instability as we head into Monday. Because here's your low pressure setup. We've got the instability along this cold front that could bring a renewed shower threat for those areas into Wisconsin, into northern Illinois, and then fishtail down into Missouri. And once you get down into Arkansas, and especially towards Louisiana, I think that's where there's going to be a little bit more on the bumpy side with some stronger wind gusts, maybe some pocket change hail with this particular setup as we go into Monday. And then there's the instability as far as the lightning display in the heat of the afternoon. So I do think these things do turn marginally severe as we head into that late afternoon, taking advantage of all that daytime heating. And then as we go into your Tuesday, that continues to move off into the east. Now the instability is going to be highlighted over Alabama, especially into Georgia there. That'll actually get down into Florida. And there's your little cool front that will be coming through over those areas in Ohio, and then impacting areas, to say, in Pittsburgh, as this will eventually go off into the East Coast, bringing those light to moderate showers in its wake. So by the time you head into Wednesday afternoon, this is where the setup would likely be across the Carolinas, up the east, up the I-95 corridor, and then up here into Pennsylvania and upstate New York. And then there's the snow line heading off into Wyoming, as well as then getting into those mountain regions of Colorado. But that's the setup in the beginning stages of a more significant event. I think we could likely go into some, widespread severe storms as we head into starting on Thursday. Because here's the dynamic setup. We're still going to have that kind of clash in temperatures. These are just weak cold fronts to start the week. But this is going to be a little bit more, stronger cold front as we end the week. We have that sharp temperature gradient as we head into Thursday. So it's going to be a very warm week again for the next 7 days across the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. And all the colder air is more or less confined to the West Coast. And where we're going to see that kind of clash in temperatures again, here's the moisture return. So as we head into Thursday, we'll be watching that low pressure center starting to deepen out down there into Kansas, as well as into portions of Nebraska. That will have your lift mechanism to pull in some of that deep Gulf moisture there, and could likely set the stage for instability, probably east of the I-35 corridor into East Texas, heading into eastern Oklahoma, into Arkansas, as well as into Louisiana. That'll be on Thursday afternoon. And I think that low pressure center continues to deepen. So by next Friday, we could be looking at a more significant setup with an area low pressure continuing to intensify over Iowa again, and where they got hit hard just a couple of days ago with, I think now they upwards to 12 tornadoes at last count I heard, through Illinois, portions of Indiana, as well as Ohio, and all the way down to Kentucky. That's where they get hit hard again. We're looking at a kind of another setup potentially, as this low pressure center will continue to deepen and strengthen. So if you look at some of these ensemble guidances of the European, and that's a pretty significant low pressure down to 977 millibar setup right on into northern Illinois again, as well as into Wisconsin. So we know we're going to have some warmer air all week long to tap into. We've got that gradient, temperature gradient, and now we're having a sharp decrease in pressures, and as well as the moisture return starts to feed and pull into this system. And even going into Saturday, that low pressure still kind of hangs around. So if this is something we're going to be kind of fine tuning as we get a little bit closer, but as of right now, it looks to have a fairly decent, significant event that we've got to be keep an eye on as we head into late next week, heading into next weekend. But overall, here's the next 7 days. So yeah, pretty much across the board. So the warm up has started, and it's going to continue all week long for a good part of the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. A lot more records are going to unfold. I don't think you get nearly as hot as you saw from the week prior, but nonetheless, it's definitely not going to be normal out there for the first week of March, that's for sure. And your highest anomalies are going to be really highlighted across the Great Lakes, as well as into the New England region. And all the cold air is really going to be confined across Western Canada, back into British Columbia there, up here to Alaska, and really confined across the Pacific Northwest, all along the West Coast, back into Nevada, into Arizona, as well as into Utah here, getting into Wyoming, and then starting to try to creep into New Mexico. But there's where the dry slot is, right? So all the activities out west with that low pressure center impacting the West Coast with that more significant winter storm for them, all the heavier rains along the coast, all the heavier snows and into the Intermountain West regions. But then you see a dry slot. Unfortunately, you got the dry slot. So mainly dry across the Southwest and mainly dry across eastern New Mexico, western Texas there, western Oklahoma, western Kansas, right there in the middle of the country. And unfortunately, this is where all the fires are taking place right now. And with the conditions for the next 7 days, those firefighters are going to have a hard time, especially with those winds really starting to crank up. And you got critical fire risk heading into this weekend. A lot of the instability is going to be likely probably east of the I-35 corridor. Some heavier rains with the complex that you're getting right now, and then you have that other complex that starts on Monday, heads into Tuesday and Wednesday. And then you have that a bigger system that likely could unfold, setting up across Kansas, getting up into Iowa, and eventually heading into northern Illinois, into Ohio as we head into that Thursday, Saturday timeframe of next week. So that is something I'm definitely going to be tracking in the days to come, for sure. So I appreciate you guys following. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me next update, why I protect you before and after the storm.